Hello, welcome to Art Tutorials Online. My name is Paul Priestley. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw a figure laid out relaxing. Yes, it's going to be interesting and we're going to be using pencil. So let's make a start. Yes, come on. For this drawing we're going to be using a Staedtler B pencil and a Derwent Artist Range Ivory Black pencil. Now we're going to start with the head. It's always a good idea if you're ever drawing any figure to start with the head first. Establish how big the head is and then you can work out the rest of the body from the size of the head. Now I'm going to just establish the shoulders here. Once I've done that, then I'm going to use the head and the shoulders to measure everything. So for example here you see this curve that I'm going to get now just where the hips are. Coincides with the top left shoulder. Get a curve in for the back hips, you see top of the hips there, about the same height as the shoulder. Establish where that section is. We're also going to be looking at the nape of the neck because immediately below that is where the armpit is. So I'm constantly looking at the drawing to see where shapes should be. You should always do this when you're drawing a figure. Look at the figure, look for sections. As you can see here, I'm measuring sections. That's going to give me the end of that foot, you see. Measure all the time, and as soon as you've done that you'll be able to produce a drawing which is in proportion. Now once we've done all the basic shapes, and we're just doing them very roughly as you can see here, once those have been established, then check to make sure that everything looks in proportion. It's crucial you do it at this stage because it's easy to make changes at this stage. It's more difficult when you've got lots of detail and shading on there later on. Now I'm going to start developing this outline now, and I'm going to obviously draw things a little bit more accurately and a little bit more carefully. You can see now I am suggesting the outline and I'm beginning to flick the pencil in to create the folds in the material. So we're going around the shapes now. Try not to make everything too straight. Try to put slight curves in, flicking the pencil to get the folds as you can see here, because this is what gives character to your drawing. And this is really important. You can see underneath there the curves are quite gentle curves, but once we get to the top here where the material of the t-shirt is being stretched, then we can start flicking inwards to suggest those folds in the material. Now at the moment all you are doing is just suggesting the folds, but you'll notice they congregate around where you get that curve in the waist as it comes up and over the hips. So I'm drawing that down now. This is the end of the t-shirt here, and just suggesting a few other little folds that go there. Now trousers. Trousers, you can see here, I'm just suggesting the pocket. The pocket is something which stands out and we can focus on when we move to the shading later on. Here you see the trousers, you've got very many more folds in this. You'll notice I'm just doing the back pockets now of the trousers, just suggesting where they are. So you've got that nice curve then for the bottom. What we're doing now is to put in the legs. Now the legs, because they're at an angle, are going to be slightly foreshortened. So they're going to look slightly shorter than they are in reality. But again, lots and lots of folds. Flick the pencil in to make it look really interesting. You can see, you can look for the folds, little triangle shapes, that sort of thing. Always work really nicely. Just suggest the boot here. Again, we're just going to go around the boot very, very carefully. But one interesting thing is the length of that boot is the same height as your head. So it's a good measure to make sure that you get the foot the right size. People often make feet too small. It's got to be the same size as your head. So we just finish off the rest of the boot here and put in a few more details. Now we've swapped over to the Derwent Artist pen, the Ivory Black, and I'm now going to start adding shading. You'll notice here I'm just going around the outline again just to establish that, but now I'm going to start shading the hair. Now, the beauty about this pencil is, and you can use any soft pencil, 4B, 6B pencil, something like that, is that you vary the tone by varying the pressure. The harder you press on, the darker the tone will be. So you've got to really learn how to vary tone by varying the pressure on the pencil. You've got to be quite subtle. It's really important you try to do that. Now you notice here I'm managing to get a gradual change in tone from the dark side of the head to the lighter side of the head. It's all done with the same pencil, but it's all about varying the pressure on the pencil. And you're doing this as you're drawing. It's a skill you've got to learn if you're going to be able to draw any tonal drawing. Now, interesting section here, little tip. Always ask yourself this question: which is nearer to me, the T-shirt or the arm? Well, the T-shirt's slightly closer, so you always shade the arm. That will make the T-shirt stand out. So the rule is quite simple. Look for something that is slightly closer to you, the T-shirt or the trousers or whatever it may be, and then you shade the object next to it, and it will make the trousers or the T-shirt stand out, makes them look as though they're actually over the arm and not part of the arm. You can see here now that I'm putting a little bit of shading in. Sometimes I'm following those folds that I've drawn, but sometimes I'm doing very subtle shading to suggest those very, very slight folds that you get in material sometimes. And these very subtle folds are something which you can do by pressing on very, very lightly with the pencil. You can see I'm doing that here now, just very, very gently, you see, just fading away almost to nothing. And you get those very nice, soft, subtle shades. Now, if you put this shading next to each other, you can leave those little white ridges. Can you see that what's happening there? Those little white ridges suggest the top of the fold, and they are where the light is catching the ridge of the fold. So we can start putting some shading in here now to suggest the folds themselves. And again, you notice I will leave little gaps that will give you the ridge of the fold again. Varying the tone, so sometimes starting dark, sometimes starting much lighter. You see, this is the lighter part of the figure. We're going to be drawing the underneath later on, which is going to be darker. But you can see here now the subtlety of movement, the subtlety of pressure that you put on. You've got to be subtle, because if you're not subtle with a drawing, it's not going to work. So you really do have to do it. I know I keep going on about it, but you've got to be subtle. So we're going over these folds here nice and gently. This takes some time, because if you're going to be an artist and you're going to spend time doing some really good tonal drawings, they're going to take a long time. In actuality, this drawing took me probably 35-40 minutes. It's obviously been speeded up slightly, so the times have been reduced down to 15 minutes so that you can see it. But you can see here I'm taking great care with the shading, because this is a light T-shirt, as you can see. Now underneath here, this is obviously going to be darker because the light is coming from above, and you can see we get much stronger shadows underneath. So I'm now pressing on much harder with the pencil. You don't have to be so subtle anymore. You see here, pressing on quite firmly, putting a little bit more. This is almost like a half tone between that very dark tone and the light tone of the T-shirt. So I'm putting in this, what we might term a half tone. Now we'll continue working on this area here. This is the gap between the T-shirt and the trousers, so this is quite dark, as you can see. Now I'm using the side of the pencil now, and I'm getting this very light, subtle effect. So I'm not using the point of the pencil because I want some very soft, subtle shading. So by using the side of the pencil I can do this. It's more effective than using the tip of the pencil. You see? Very, very subtle. And I can develop this with a little stronger shadow underneath now, you see?
So I'm putting in another little half tone there. So there's not such a strong gap between the very dark shadow and the lighter shadow. Here we'll just strengthen this area a little bit, put in a little secondary shadows, bring those shadows across, which makes it look that much more effective. You can see how the drawing is beginning to develop here. Now, once we've worked on the arm, we're going to go back to the trousers. And when we start working on the trousers, this is when we're going to switch back to the point of the pencil, and we're going to press on really hard. Now I'm working on the pocket. The pocket is going to be very dark, but you notice because I'm seeing inside the pocket, I've done that very, very dark, but it focuses the eye then on that little detail. And by leaving that light ridge next to the pocket, you see how that pocket now stands out. This is what we want to be looking for, you see. We want to get the eye to wander around the drawing and see details. Here I'm putting folds in around the trousers, but they're much darker and stronger than we got on the t-shirt, because effectively these are darker, it's darker material, so we're going to cast stronger shadow. Down at the bottom here, where the light is finding it difficult to get to, you see I'm making the trousers very dark, and I'm pressing on really hard with the pencil to get that effect. Again, I'm using the side of the pencil to get the half tone, gradually bring it up. You notice how much lighter it becomes to get as you go over. Make sure you don't shade everything. Notice by the pocket, I've left a little section of white light, because that will emphasize things. So don't overdo the shading. Sometimes it's what you don't shade that is just as effective as what you do shade. Now at the top here, this leg, this person's right leg, you see the top leg here, light is coming down onto it. So the shading here is a little bit more subtle, but not quite so dark. Apart from this little section here, you see this little section here? Now you'll notice I've done that very dark, because have you noticed how it makes the leg stand away from the bottom? You see, because of contrast. It's the same effect we had before, if you think about it. The bottom's closer to us, so we shade the leg. Now we're putting a lot of dark tones and folds into the leg here. Put the dark tones in first, and now I'm putting the half tones, much more subtle. Notice I'm leaving slight little gaps again, so you get the highlights on top of the ridges of the folds. Most important you try and do this. Shading again underneath the trousers, where the trouser meets the boot. You see, makes the boot look as though it's underneath the trousers, or going underneath the trousers. Just put a little bit more shading on the boot itself, just to suggest that. You'll notice the sole is obviously away from the light, so we can make the sole very, very dark, as you can see here. Coming round, make that very, very dark. Okay, and you can see now the foot is beginning to be suggested. Just put a few little lighter tones on there. That's it, just suggesting the sole and edge here. Now the foot, which is hidden underneath this leg, his left leg, you see we can make the sole of this foot very much darker because it's in the shadow. You see here, so we're putting very, very strong tones on this. You'll notice also that once we start shading the rest of this leg, we're going to make this very, very dark along this section here, you see, because I want it to stand out from or stand back from the trousers. It's got to look as though it's underneath the figure, as you can see here. So the shadows on this leg are going to be so much stronger. Notice how that subtle shading started off quite light to get dark. Here, get very, very dark because I want it to stand out from the trousers. It now looks as though it's behind and further back than the leg, you see. We'll just finish off with a few little details on the floor just to make it look as though this person's actually laying on something. Might be outside on the grass, something like that. So you can see how by taking time with your drawing you can produce something that works really, really well. I hope you've enjoyed the drawing. I hope your drawing's coming on really, really well. Good luck.
Thank you for watching Art Tutorials Online. I hope you've learnt something about how to draw a figure laying down and relaxing. If you'd like to see more art tutorials like this one, then go and visit my YouTube channel. You can see it here. There's lots of interesting videos there for beginners and for those people who want to develop their drawing skills. If you want to support the production of these videos, then have a look at my Patreon channel. You'll get lots of interesting rewards for signing up as a patron. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers!